Hi there, it's Richard Little from Your Land Partner. This is video 44 out of 100, and we're in a short series of videos on securing the deal. And today I'm going to be talking to you about exchange with delayed completion. Now, it isn't something that we do a great deal of in our business, but it is something that we did a couple of years ago, or a few years ago. So there are certain circumstances where it can be beneficial. So just to explain what it is, it's you exchange on the purchase contract. But you have a delayed completion, which could be for any length of time and a number of different reasons. So in our particular case, just to give you a working example, if you like, it was for 18 months. So what we actually did, I can't remember the exact numbers, but it was something like a purchase of a property for 250,000 or something like that, and we exchanged on might have been 10% or it might be 5%, something like that. But what we actually did is it's the terms of what you're going to negotiate. So in that particular case, we actually had possession. So we had possession, and it was being run as, was it an HMO, something like that. It was rooms anyway, but it actually had planning issues, so we couldn't really purchase it because it didn't have permission to be run as what it was. It was actually offices that had been sort of partly converted, obviously not formally, shall we say, and so they'd had enforcement notices against them. So it really became that the property had a very low value because it didn't actually have a legitimate planning use, because it was as I was originally, it was B1 office, but then they changed it by use, so it wasn't even B1 office anymore, so it really did have no use. So the only way that we could take that forward without too much risk is we knew we could solve it, and so effectively we knew what we got to do to get planning. It would have been at that particular time it was a B1A, so it would have been prior approval, permit development for office to resi, but because it had an enforcement notice and no actual legal use, that wasn't relevant, so we had to go through full planning. So what we did is we knew that it would probably take us 6 or 9 months because it was a mess planning, but we knew that we could do it, so we were happy to commit to that completion, because if you're exchanged with a delayed completion, then you are going to complete, you're just not going to complete for a certain amount of time. So you have to make sure if you're going to do that, there's a reason for it. It benefited the owners of the property, because really we gave them as much value as we possibly could by sorting out their problem. We got it relatively low price, I suppose, but we had to have a lot of work. We had to do a lot of work to actually legalise it, shall we say. So in that particular case, we exchanged, we took over the property, so we ran it for, I don't know, 18 months. I think what we did, we got planning, we actually did all the building works prior to completing. But we're fairly safe because we know it's in our hands. We are going to complete, but I think what we were looking to do is we were looking to finance it. I think we were using cash or whatever, wanted to get our money out sooner rather than later. So we obviously wanted to complete it as soon as we can, and refinance it at completion. So something like that anyways is what we actually did. Now you could actually do an exchange with delayed completion without taking possession, because there's no point taking possession of the property unless there's a benefit to you. There is no point. I suppose the caveat to that, I'm not going to contradict myself to an extent, is if you have a motivated vendor, a motivated seller, if you like, of whatever it is, if they want it off their desk, they may well give you possession of it, and you might not have to do anything, but actually it's off their desk. So there could be a benefit, I suppose, in releasing them of whatever whatever sort of pressure they might be under or whatever. So but what you got to bear in mind is once you've exchanged, you're responsible for insurance and everything else, whether it's a piece of land or whether it's a building. As I say, there's limited usage from our perspective, but certainly in smaller developments, when you're taking over a building, you may well exchange, do all the building works, to an extent at your risk, and you probably need the cash because you're not probably going to be able to borrow on it at that point unless you've got other assets to borrow against. But then when it's actually completed, you may then be able to finance it out at that point. So there's other ways of looking at similar deals like that with vendor finance and different things. But specifically now, it's exchange with delay completion. So don't dismiss it, and when you're doing a full development appraisal and you're considering it, it's okay, does a exchange with delay completion suit this project? Does it suit us, and does it suit the vendor? First of all, if it don't suit the vendor, it's not really going to happen, and it has to have a reason to suit you, and generally it will be because it suits the vendor, so it actually gives you an edge. So and as I say, there is, once you've exchanged, now there are a number of examples where even beyond exchange the deal can fall flat and things, but we're not going to get into that today. Mostly you're relatively secure. They're quite secure because they're exchanged. You are going to have to complete at a certain point, or you might default and then you're going to give up whatever monies, and you might be liable for damages and various things. So there's a commitment and assurance on both sides. So it could be worth doing. It could be worth doing delaying the completion while you actually sort the planning out, for instance. So it's not a subject to planning, because you're going to sort the planning out, even on permit development and prior approval. You might within 90 days or whatever, you might get all the paperwork done and actually get your planning in place. Excuse me. So there can be benefits. So it's just something we really want to talk about, just very briefly, just to sort of say, just to get you to understand what it is, and is it suitable in anything that you're actually looking at. As I say, in a lot of bigger land deals, don't really see that really is going to be much of much use. We have got one at the moment where, again, there's plan enforcement notices been issued, so there's a planning mess, so that there is no real value to it. But we know once we've sorted that out, then actually exchange delay completion could work there, but it's part of a bigger purchase for us, so we're doing it in a different way. But if we were just purchasing those barns, it's going to be about 8 or 9 units, I expect at the end. Then we could have done an exchange delay completion, because we'd have secured the site, and a relatively straightforward purchase contract. Because if you enter into options and promotion agreements, they tend to be far more complicated than a straightforward purchase agreement, or even a conditional purchase agreement. So there are benefits to it, but you've got to be fairly sure on the outcome, in terms of perhaps if it's a planning issue, you've got to be fairly certain you're going to actually achieve that. So absolutely worth looking at. But I would say, the instances where it's valid are probably going to be fairly rare. But if you don't know about it, it isn't something that you pretend you would actually use. So just really, there's not much else you can say about it, in all honesty. It's exchange with delay completion. It's exactly what we said. We're exchanging the property. We delay it for, it can be any amount of time. It can be many, many years, if there is a reason to do that. And I know there's certainly investors and some sort of smaller deals from our point of view where it can be much more useful. But from a development point of view, then far more limited in the amount of times that we can use it. But it gives surety as much as you can to both ends. So, and it's a relatively simple contract. So actually, maybe now I've talked about it more, we might be considering a little bit more. But hopefully that's helpful. That's Richard Little from Your Land Partner, talking about exchange with delay completion. Catch you again soon.